So
Hey,
thanks
everybody.
everyone for being here, whether you're tuning in live or whether you're watching this recorded. We're super happy to have you here just to learn more about the NWHL and ice hockey in general. I am Ashley Hart. I'm CEO of She Plays, and we're super happy to be having this conversation and to be hosting some NWHL fantasy games this season. So definitely check those out at she-plays.com. Just a quick intro for all of our amazing panelists. We've got Erica Ayala, NWHL analyst, as well as host of the Founding Four podcast. And we've got Spencer Fascetta, head writer of Pride Diehards, and also our She Plays NWHL fantasy writer this year. So super excited to have you on. And last but certainly not least, we've got Jillian Dempsey, a forward for the Boston Pride and the 2019-2020 co-MVP for the NWHL, and also the current record holder for all-time NWHL games played, goals, assists, and points. NBD. Jillian, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having us. This is awesome.
Yeah, and real quick, just a little housekeeping. If you guys have any questions, be sure to click on the Q&A section, and I'll be reading those throughout and funneling those to Erica if we get any. And yeah, Erica, take it away.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you all for joining us, whether you're joining us live or on the replay, but we are really excited to talk about the National Women's Hockey League. This will be the 6th season, and no one can speak to that more than the captain of the Boston Pride, Jillian Dempsey, that we have here. But we are also excited to have Spencer with us because this is going to be for beginners. So Dempsey, I'm going to rely on your memory and for you to talk a little bit about what the experience is on the ice. But Spencer, for you, I'd love for you to help walk us through some of the analytics of everything, because we see that analytics is certainly the way of sports, with fantasy leagues being more popular, and the NWHL is also embracing that in the 2021 season with a lot of different partnerships, Stathletes being one of them. And so we want to break all of that down. And as Spencer was telling us in the green room, if you will, to bridge that. But first, let's start, Jillian, talking about what is the National Women's Hockey League?
The National Women's Hockey League is the first professional women's hockey league in North America that pays players. It, like you said, it's in its 6th year now. I have been part of the league and part of the Boston Pride since the inaugural season. And that is the last time we have hoisted the cup. So I'm determined and motivated to change that in this next couple of weeks in the Lake Placid bubble. But the league has expanded from the 4 original teams. We had Boston, the Metropolitan Riveters. They were the New York.
The New York
Riveters.
Riveters.
New York Riveters.
Yeah.
They were in Brooklyn.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, we played at like the Aviator Center, Aviator Place. It was an old airplane hangar, I think it was. So that was a neat experience. Then we have Connecticut Whale and the Buffalo Buttes. And 2 seasons ago, the league added the Minnesota Whitecaps, and obviously the big off-season announcement this year was that the Toronto Six, another privately owned team, have entered the mix. And word on the street is we already have a rivalry with them. I guess some Twitter happening there. And I'm not the most social media on top of it person, but that Toronto, Boston, that runs deep, and eager to get out there and compete against them. Trying to think of how well there's been tremendous growth over the 6 years, and we've added many sponsorships and partnerships that the players are thrilled about, and we appreciate so much. We've grown in our fan base. We've had Twitch. Now we're going to have games on NBC. So very excited and honored to be part of this league and to continue growing the game and hunting the Isabel Cup.
Hey, there it is. Jill, that was pretty good. That was a pretty good summary. Yeah, for sure. And I see we have a question here from Jamie. Aside from Twitch, are there other options for seeing the round robin and early knockout games? So the regular season will all be on Twitch TV. So I'll be one of the broadcasters bringing you those games, and they will also be archived there and probably later on YouTube. But the answer is that all of the first round games, the regular season and the round robin games will be on Twitch. The NBC Sports Network deal starts with the semifinals, which starts on February 4th. So there will be 2 games on February 4th, and then the Isabel Cup final. And we've already heard Demps has her eye circled on her calendar, February 5th, because that, of course, is when the Isabel Cup final will be broadcast on national television with NBC Sports Network. Spencer, I want to bring you in here. Jillian did a really great job walking us through the history of the league, but I would like to, and no bias because Jill's in the chat here with us, but who are some players to watch, and what would you say are some of the identifiers for the 6 teams? Well, I suppose we should say the 5 teams and then the newest team, Toronto.
So I think it's important to note that Jillian is the record holder for every offensive record in the league. So that kind of speaks for itself. Allie Thunstrom was co-MVP with her last year, the Minnesota Whitecaps. I think the 2 of them are probably the 2 most dangerous scorers in the league. Boston's pretty stacked. No bias as the Pride Diehards head, but the Pride are very, very deep offensively. They lost a single game last year. That was to Minnesota, but it was close, and that was set to be the rematch in the Isabel Cup final before all this craziness kind of trickled down and finally hit the league. Connecticut has had a rough couple of years, but I'm a big fan of what they did this offseason. They look like they really built some power. They built from the back out. They brought in new goaltending. They really expanded their defense. I think their defense might be one of the more mobile ones in the league. Kayla Friesen was the number 2 pick in the draft. She is probably going to be a focal point of that offense, as well as Emma Vlasic. The Riveters, everything runs through Madison Packer. She's the captain. She is one of the league's most effective agitators. She scores a lot of points, and she loves and thrives off of dragging her opponents into the mess with her. So she'll draw a lot of penalties. She'll take a decent amount herself, but she is involved in the game in every facet. She's incredibly physical and tough to play against. Kendall Cornine and her really made a really good pairing with Metropolitan last year. The Whitecaps, Amanda Boulier is one of the best defenders in the league, and Amanda Leveille is probably the best goaltender in the league's young history. They really form the backbone there. Thunstrom up front and John Curtis are really the focal points of the attack. For Buffalo, they unfortunately are going to be without their new captain, Taylor Kersey, who was their leading scorer last year. But they have some really interesting young pieces, and they, more than any team in the league, tend to run their offense through the blue line. So look out for MJ Peltier, who set all kinds of records last year as a rookie defender, power play points from the blue line. And she blocks a lot of shots, something that fantasy owners may want to pay attention to. For Toronto, Michaela Grant-Mentis made a quick debut with Buffalo at the end of the year last year. She really impressed. I expect her. She's going to be on a line with a couple of rookies. Yves Coteau-Gabot, I definitely butchered that because I can't speak French. I know that Digit Murphy calls her Frenchie. Those 2 will be on a line together, and I expect them to be really the main attack, along with Cheyenne Darkangelo, who's a veteran of the league that signed up with the 6. I think every team has star power, and that's really hard to do. So you're not going to go into any game and not see something spectacular.
I think that's I mean, these two are crushing it. I mean, I'm so glad all I have to do is be the moderator because we've got all the knowledge right here. But we're going to move into breaking down hockey. So we talked about the NWHL, but now let's talk about what does it mean to do that hockey? So we're going to get into that. But before we do that, there's a question here. Leslie, Leslie is asking this question to you, Jillian. What are some of the differences preparing for this bubble season? Spencer did a great job talking about a lot of the talent that is in this league, but what is it going to take to make manifest all that hard work and talent in such a short season? And how are you preparing differently for that?
Yeah, I mean, like Spencer mentioned, every single team is a threat. You know, you can't take any game lightly. You can't take any competitor lightly. You know, despite what records from the past have said, and you know, numbers are numbers in that sense. You show up and it's game day, and all bets are off, and it's come down to who is going to compete the hardest. And I think in this setting, it really is about who's kind of going to outlast everybody else. You know, it's potentially 9 games over the course of 13 days. And that's a tremendous amount of hockey packed in. It's almost like going back to those youth days when you would play 6 games in a weekend. And those were 12-minute periods, running time. And it was just, you know, you had that youthfulness on your side. But you know, it's really going to be a grind, and it's going to come down to who wants it the most and who's going to push through that mental and physical fatigue and be able to bounce back right away the next day. So, you know, and it's the best as a hockey player, that much hockey packed in, you're just going to, you know, be able to answer back the next game. And then the day after, you get another opportunity, and it's just making the most of those chances because every single game matters. And in the past, that's how it's been with this league as well. You know, there's so few teams, and when it comes down to it, you know, playoffs would be, you know, it's 1 game elimination when it came down to playoffs, and you have to always be ready and ready to compete. So, you know, speaking to what's been said already, I think it's really about showing up every single game and having that collective effort to get the job done. So just gotta roll through and make the most out of every shift and not take a single shift or play off.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it sounds like the conditioning coming in is going to be extremely important. And then the recovery while you're in the bubble is extremely important. I know from talking to executive director of the NWHL Players Association, Anya Packer, that for at least 2 seasons now, or going into 2 seasons, recovery has been extremely important. And I would venture to guess that the players are extremely excited about some of those recovery type partners and sponsors that have been signed leading up to this season in particular. For everyone that's watching us live right now, we are going to switch over to going to some of the basics, and I'm going to bring Spencer in here. So Jillian Dempsey is a forward. We have established that she is very good at taking that little round puck and cracking it into the net. But Spencer, let's talk about who exactly is on the ice. So what are the different positions and how many players from each team are competing on the ice at one time?
So a maximum of 6 players on the ice for either team at any given time. You don't have to have a goalie on the ice. Teams will pull the goalie for a 6th skater if they're down towards the end of the game. But typically you'll see 5-on-5, even strength, a goaltender, 2 defenders, 3 forwards, 2 wings and a center. The center is the one taking the faceoffs typically. Getting into different special teams, the penalty kill means you have a player that has made an infraction, something against the rules. They're sent off for 2 minutes, generally for a minor. That means that the team that they are on is now down a player. So for that amount of time, or until the other team scores in that time frame, the offending team is down to 4 players, so 5-on-4. or 5-on-3, depending on how many penalties they've taken at one time. You'll see a lot of different mixing and matching when it comes to special teams. I think that with a lot of players, you'll find that positionally, it's more about how you line up for the face-off than anything else. So you'll see defenders that are, really involved down low in the play and love to jump in on the offense. Likewise, you'll see plenty of forwards that excel much more in the defensive side of the game than you do offensively. And I think everybody has a role to play in that sense. There's no pros or cons to having different players fill different roles and have different strengths. The best teams have a multitude and as diverse a group of players as they can. To explain anything further would be a little aggressive. I know that Mike and I have talked. Mike Murphy, who's a good friend of Erica and I and Jillian's, and he and I have debated the merits of positionless hockey multiple times.
Interesting.
So I think that if you want to use positions as a structure, that's great and that works really well. But as soon as that structure breaks down, that's when the magic happens.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've honestly never given much thought to positionless hockey. Maybe that's because I have very strong opinions about positionless basketball, which is another sport that I cover and used to play. I never played hockey, so I maybe that's also why I'm not going to speak to positionless hockey. But Jillian, let's get you in here. I mentioned that you're a forward, but what would you consider your specialty? Spencer did a great job kind of breaking that down, but let's talk a little bit more about strategy. Obviously, we have alluded to that you are able to not only contribute to goals being scored, but to score a few yourself. But how would you describe your position on the ice? And what are your thoughts on positionless hockey?
Well, I guess to start with positionless hockey, I feel like that's what the 3-on-3 or kind of this summer leagues and even mini games, it kind of tends to take that form. And as a forward who values the defensive side of, the defensive side, I prefer positions. I like knowing that, that everybody's doing their job and playing that role. When that breaks down, yeah, there's some great opportunities and it is fun to have those as well. But I think, I don't know, when you get some of those breakdowns, it leads to chances in the other team's favor as well. So I guess double-edged sword there, but like you mentioned, I'm a forward, I'm center. In college, and younger, I played center and wing. But geez, I guess now for the past 6 years or so, I've been pretty much exclusively center. And for anybody who doesn't know, that means I'm the player taking the drop of the puck. So after every stoppage of play, it starts with a face-off on one of the 9 dots on the ice. And I won't get too into the detail of what ends up where, but centers take multiple face-offs a game. Sometimes I'm close to, I'd say probably get close to 25 a game. And face-offs are critical because it's kind of, off that draw, you establish possession. If you win the draw as a center, if I win the draw, that means that I got the puck to go where I wanted it to, roughly, or at least that my team came up with the puck. And that's the biggest part of it, is that I want my team to end up with the puck. Then we have possession, and then we're kind of in control off that initial play. And it happens so quickly, but though winning faceoffs really does add up over the course of a game, especially when you have some crucial defensive zone faceoffs or special teams faceoffs or late in a period. And you just have to be especially sharp. And like my teammate Lexi Lang is a real face-off specialist. Like, she's somebody who, and if there's crunch time, I'm like, you got this, Lex. Like, she's somebody who you have tremendous confidence in on the dot. So taking faceoffs is a big part of what a center does. A center is also tend to be viewed as more of a two-way player. Loves, obviously getting in there in the offensive end and trying to create some scoring opportunities and being part of that in the offensive zone and off the rush. But your duties in the defensive zone tend to be you play more of a role than wingers. Wingers have their job up there kind of watching the D, but as the center, you're essentially viewed as a third defenseman down low in your own zone. And you just have to be constantly head on a swivel, making sure that nobody's getting open or sneaking behind. And you're just kind of doing a lot more of the dirty work down there and working with the defenseman to kind of get control of the puck, chip it out, pass it out, and get your team moving into the offensive zone. So centers really are deeply involved in every area of the ice. And I love that part about being a center because I love back checking. I love getting some block shots. I love being able to battle in the corners and dig out a puck and get us moving up the ice. I enjoy those aspects of the game as much as I enjoy scoring a goal or making a pass to somebody who puts the puck in the net.
I mean, that's why I once referred to Jillian Dempsey as someone that has that Mamba type mentality, can do it all, has a respect for the game, knows how to play the game the way it's supposed to be played, and is not afraid to mix it up respectively within the rules. But, I saw you, chuckle a little there, Demps, when the name Madison Packer was mentioned. I think Madison definitely has a reputation, and I would argue probably embraces it for picking up penalties. So Spencer and Jillian, we're going to talk a little bit about penalties here. So, there's a chant in most sports, you can't do that. So what are some of the things you absolutely cannot do in hockey? Why don't we start with you, Demps?
Well, obviously, when I think of women's hockey, and a big difference between men's hockey is just that you can't body check. You can't hit, as they say. That being said, there is plenty of physicality and borderline body checks here and there. And we love that, that we definitely don't shy away from that. And we almost prefer when the refs let us play and let it get physical like that. But that one I would say is one of the main absolutely you cannot do. Should we alternate on this one, Spencer? Or
I mean, yeah, you can't trip people either with your stick or your leg. You can't. Basically, the stick is designed to play the puck, and that's about it.
Yeah, no slashing, even though there's a fine line sometimes. And there's cross checking. Like Spencer said, you can't use your stick. You'll see people hold the stick like that and really just jab you in the rib or in the back. Hitting from behind. If you hit somebody when their back is turned to you and you hit their back and either open ice, or that usually happens in battles along the boards, and it's a dangerous play. So if you get a hitting from behind, you're ejected from that game, and your team will serve a 10-minute penalty on top of that. So you're out, and sometimes for the next game, depending. But you can't have too many men on the ice, so too many women. If you have an extra player, which sometimes happens on a miscommunication on a change, or if your team was on the penalty kill and then that player's out of the box, and if you have more than your 5 players and goalie on the ice, then you'll get called for too many men and have to serve a penalty. Flipping the puck intentionally over the glass and outside the rink would be called a delay of game. If it deflects off the glass or off an opposing teammate's or an opposing player or your own teammate's stick or body, it doesn't count as a delay of game. So that's one of those. The boards in Connecticut used to be low. So if you're trying to go for a little chip, smart play, and then you get too much on it, that was a tough penalty to take, especially in the D zone.
The delay game one is a frustrating one. That one, typically is from your own blue line back, so defensive zone only, they'll penalize you for. Otherwise, it's just you can't change players. There's the ever nebulous roughing penalty that officials just kind of call to try and rein in some of the excess physicality. Can't hit anybody with your elbow. Can't hit anyone in the head. Fighting is not allowed, although refs will typically let you try to get out of your system before they try and jump in the middle of it. That'll give you 5 minutes in the box and a game and probably a suspension afterwards.
And so let's talk about that though, because you're talking about the in the box and penalties. So in some sports like basketball, you get a whistle blown and you rack up fouls. You have a certain amount of fouls, you get out of the game. Soccer, you get a yellow card, you get too many yellow cards, you get a straight red, you're out of the game. So there are some penalties, and you both have laid those out, that will get you booted from a game. But what happens in a general, what we usually see as a 2-minute penalty? What happens to the team that is responsible, or the player and their team that's responsible for the penalty? And what about the opposition? What are they doing after the penalty is called? Let's go to Demps for this one.
So after the whistle is blown, player goes into the penalty box to serve their time. And by the way, when you are in the penalty box, it is the longest 2 minutes ever. And I swear every time I'm in there, there happens to be a million whistles, and I'm in there for longer, much longer than the 2 minutes. So, or maybe it's just how it feels, because you feel shame when you go to the box. I forget what that's from, but that's from something, and it's true. So the team that has the player in the box is on what we call the penalty kill. You're trying to kill off the penalty. And sometimes it's a power kill if you're a very offensive penalty kill and try to score what would be called a shorthanded goal because you're down a player or two, if there were more than one penalty. And then the team that doesn't have a player in the box has what we call a power play. So they have that extra player out there, and they're really just trying to utilize the fact that they have one extra player trying to create more space and time to set up a great goal scoring opportunity. So often you'll see those teams working the puck on the perimeter and really trying to set up an automatic goal opportunity, which are very tough to come by. But when you're defending, you can shoot the puck all the way down the ice, and it wouldn't be an icing, which is normally a whistle and then a face off in your defensive zone. But when you're on the penalty kill, you can do that. And if you run it effectively and you're doing a great job, then sometimes you gather that puck, you fire it down, you go for a change, fresh bodies come out, and you just keep rolling that way. And if the power play is great, a solid power play is around 20%, which is surprising, but that's how difficult it is to score in hockey. And even with that extra player, it's still going to be tough to put the puck in the net. So, and it's lovely when you're on the power play and the penalty kill gets another penalty, and then you get the 5-on-3, which should most often be goals.
So you gave us a lot there: penalty kill, power play, but all of this is to do what you do best, Jillian Dempsey, and that's to score goals, to get points, get assists. And so we hear this a lot in hockey, but I'm just gonna ask you both. When it comes to scoring, generally speaking, hockey games are low scoring, like sub 5 goals per team, I'd say is normal. But what is the toughest lead to maintain in hockey? What's the real answer? All right, because we hear it for almost every actual score, but what is the actual toughest lead in hockey? And we'll end it here as we're coming close to time. But Spencer, what do you think is the answer? What is the toughest lead to maintain in hockey?
Coming from a cynical New Englander, I'd say 4-1 lead in the Garden in Game 7. But in terms of actually applying things to the sport, I think it's definitely a 2-goal lead, because if you allow another goal, it becomes a 1-goal game, and one bounce of the puck can change everything. If you extend that to 3 goals, it almost puts the game to a point where it feels out of reach or it feels insurmountable for the other team. So that next goal in a 2-goal game is one of the most important ones you can score.
All right, Spencer has weighed in. Demps, what do you say as a player, from a player perspective, what's the most important lead to maintain, thus making it also the hardest lead to maintain?
I feel that 2 is probably my answer as well, because when you have that 1-goal lead, just everything's a little sharper, like you're being that much more, I don't want to say safe, because you're still playing on your toes if you're doing it right. Once you get back on your heels, you're playing not to lose, which is the wrong mindset, and then you get yourself into a tough situation. But I feel like that 2-goal lead is tough because it feels like enough of a cushion. But like Spencer said, as soon as that team gets that opportunity and makes it a 1-goal lead, it feels like there's a huge swing of momentum, and all of a sudden you're playing, things kind of shift, and there's a little bit of that panic because now it's cut in half, and you could just feel the energy shift often. And so I would say that when you have a 2-goal lead and the other team scores, and then you are fighting to hold on to that 1-goal lead, like ending that game and winning it after that kind of situation is always like a huge sigh of relief, because those games do get quite intense after that. And one goal leads are tough too, but I think the way that you play it is a little bit different than when you have the 2-goal lead. So 3 or more is a comfortable spot to be, as long as you keep that foot on the gas and you keep going. Once you let up, then you give these other teams chances to get back in the game, and that's the last thing you want to do.
Well, there you have it, folks. Now we know why the 2-goal lead is the toughest one to maintain in hockey. I don't know, 3 or more though, when you've got people that can score the way we've seen Taylor Kersey score in lightning quick speed. Yeah. And then of course there was that game in Minnesota where both teams, within the last minute, what was it, 3 goals? That was wild. Yeah, so even that, there are outliers, I guess is what I'm saying. But Jillian Dempsey and Spencer Fascetta, thank you so much for joining us. And of course, we want to thank She Plays for having this NWHL conference and webinar for beginners. But I think we really just scratched the surface. So we'll have to see what else is coming from She Plays. But Jillian, of course, we want to wish you safe travels to Lake Placid and best of luck in 2021.
Thank you so much. Thanks everybody for joining us.